Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a set of documents that really stress tests the whole concept of a trust.
Hmm.
And I don't just mean trust between people, though, that is definitely
Right.
part of it. I mean the legal entity, the capital T trust.
It's a fascinating case study because usually when you set up an irrevocable trust, the whole intention is right there in the name. It's supposed to be permanent.
A safe.
Exactly. It's a safe. You put assets inside, you lock the door, and those assets are protected for the beneficiaries.
That's the theory, right? It's supposed to be rock solid. But the story we're looking at today, it challenges that. We have this huge stack of source material deeds of trust, warranty deeds, loan
The
modifications.
trust certifications.
It all spans from 1995 all the way to 2020, and it tells a very different story about a family trust.
It's a dense paper trail, no doubt. But when you start lining up the dates of the signatures, a very specific narrative emerges. You realize it's not just paperwork. It's a timeline of how value can be moved or hidden or just extracted if you know which levers to pull.
Right. And our mission today is specifically to trace the operations of the McClure family. We're looking at this partnership between two men, Ronald McClure and Jason McClure, and trying to understand how their financial moves seem to be stripping value away from a third family member, James McClure.
It's a classic and, really a tragic case study in fiduciary duty versus, well, business ambition. You see this pattern where assets meant for James are being leveraged and transferred by the very people whose legal job is to protect them.
Okay, so before we get into the specific transactions, and there are some big ones, we need to map out the players. Because when I first looked at these files, it felt like a bowl of alphabet soup. ITOWOOOCNTO.
It's designed to be complex. That's often the nature of this kind of asset management. But we can simplify it. At the center of the web, you have the ITOW Family Limited Partnership. That seems to be the main engineer.
And that's managed by its general partner, ITOWGP LLC.
Correct. And then you have a layer of other LLCs below that. You've got OOC LLC and NTO LLC. These seem to be the operational arms used to hold real estate or manage the loans.
And running the show for most of these are Ronald and Jason McClure.
Yes.
Oh.
Ronald is sort of the patriarch figure here. He's often signing as the manager for ITOW and OOC. But for our purposes, the most critical entities are the trusts. There's the MLR Living Trust, which is Ronald and Linda McClure, and then there's JCJ Irrevocable Trust.
The JCJ dated back in 1995.
October 17th, 1995. And this is crucial. We found these beneficiary disclosures exhibits in multiple documents, one in 2011, another in 2018.
And they spell it out.
They spell it out clear as day. The beneficiaries are Jason R. McClure, Candy L. McClure Shipley, and James R. McClure.
So James isn't just a bystander, he's a documented beneficiary.
He is, and it goes even further than the JCJ Trust. The documents imply that James also has a beneficial interest in the ITOW Family Limited Partnership and probably the MLR Trust structure, too. He is woven into the fabric of this family's wealth, at least on paper.
They list his address and everything.
Repeatedly. West Lucia Drive in Phoenix. There's no ambiguity that he's an intended beneficiary.
Okay, so James is in the trust, he's in the partnership, but who's running it? Who holds the keys to that safe we talked about?
That would be Jason McClure. Specifically for the JCJ Irrevocable Trust, the documents consistently show Jason McClure signing as the trustee.
And this is where the red flags for me really start to pop up. Because Jason is the trustee for the pot of money that James is supposed to benefit from. But he's also business partners with his father, Ronald, and all these other companies, ITU, W, NTO.
The same companies doing deals with the trust.
Exactly.
That dual role is the fulcrum for this entire story. A trustee has a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of all beneficiaries. That means he has to look out for James just as much as he looks out for himself.
But a business partner has a duty to the business.
And when those two roles collide, things get messy.
It sounds like he's wearing two hats, but only looking in one mirror.
That is a very, very accurate way to put it.
So let's look at just how messy this gets. The year 2011 seems to be where the rubber really meets the road.
It's a pivotal year. In July and September of 2011, we see the ITOW Family Limited Partnership start moving real estate interests around like chess pieces. They're conveying fractional interest to OOOC LLC.
The company Ronald controls?
Right. Usually big chunks, 47%, 68%, and then smaller chunks to the JCJ Irrevocable Trust.
Now, on the surface, that sounds okay, right? Here we go, JCJ Trust, have some property. It looks like they're funding it.
If it were a simple gift, yes. But you have to look at what happens immediately after those transfers. You have to connect the asset transfer to the liability that follows it. Take a look at the deed of trust dated September 15th, 2011.
This is the big loan document.
The massive loan. On that exact same timeline, these entities led by Ronald and Jason take out a loan from the Biltmore Bank of Arizona for nearly $4 million.
How much exactly?
$3,962,700.
So almost $4 million. Now, who is listed as the truster or the borrower on that loan?
The list includes ITO-WGP, OOOC, NTO, and Jason McClure as trustee of the JCJ Irrevocable Trust.
Wait a minute. So the JCJ Trust, the assets meant to protect James, is co-signing a $4 million business loan.
Correct. The assets held in trust for James are being used as collateral. They're being cross-collateralized with the business debts of Ronald and Jason. This is where their partnership starts to directly harm the security of James's trust.
So James's slice of the pie is suddenly sitting under a mountain of debt. Surely for something that big, James would have to sign off on it.
That is the $4 million question, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you look at the signature pages on that deed of trust and the assignment of rents that goes with it, you see Ronald signing for MLR, OOC, and ITOW. You see Jason signing for JCJ and NTO.
And James?
Nowhere. Not a signature, not an initial, not an acknowledgement, nothing.
How is that even legal? If I'm a beneficiary and you mortgage my inheritance to fund your business, don't I have to say yes?
Well, in many trust structures, the trustee has broad discretionary powers. If the trust document grants Jason the power to borrow or encumber assets, he can legally do it without asking James.
But just because he can, does that mean he should?
Exactly. That's the breach of fiduciary duty. Is it in James's best interest to have his trust fund act as a guarantor for a risky business loan?
It's hard to see how.
Yes. The benefit of that loan, the cash flow, that all flows to the active businesses like OOC and ITOW where Ronald and Jason are in charge. They get to use the money. But the risk, that gets shared by the JCJ Trust.
It creates a closed loop where James's assets are just fuel for their engine.
And this isn't a one-time thing, is it? This debt just hangs around.
For years, we see modification of deed of trust documents in December 2013, then again in December 2014. They just keep extending it.
Kicking the can down the road. Jason signs them all as trustee. Ronald signs as manager. All while that $4 million burden stays strapped to the JCJ Trust.
While James is presumably completely unaware.
Based on the absence of his signature or any kind of notice to beneficiary in these files, that's the most likely scenario. He's a beneficiary in name, but an outsider in practice.
There's another layer to this that I found really confusing, and it's the movement of the ownership percentages. It felt like a shell game.
It is very much a shuffle, and that confusion can be part of the strategy. We see assets moving from the ITOW partnership to Jason as trustee in his OAOC, but the percentages.
They're all over the place. In one document, JCJ gets 14.855%. In another, it's 29.71%. And then we see these quitclaim deeds.
Right. And a quitclaim deed is it's a much looser kind of transfer than a warranty deed.
A warranty deed says, I own this, it's clean, and I'm selling it to you.
Right. It offers protection. A quitclaim deed just says, whatever interest I might have in this property, I'm giving it to you. There are no promises.
Yeah.
It's often used between family members or related companies to move assets quickly.
And who's moving what here?
Well, look at the warranty deed recorded in June 2018. We see Jason McClure again as trustee of JCJ and Ronald McClure, conveying rights. But often they seem to be conveying them to themselves or to other entities they control.
So Jason, acting for James's trust, is transferring assets out to companies managed by Jason and Ronald.
That's what the paperwork indicates. This is the textbook definition of self-dealing. When a trustee engages in transactions with entities that he or his close family controls, it's a massive red flag.
They're just trading assets between different pockets of the same pair of pants.
An apt analogy.
Yeah.
Except one of those pockets, the JCJ Trust pocket, seems to have a hole in it.
And James is the one losing the change. By constantly shifting the titles and the percentages, it becomes almost impossible to track the true value of the trust.
It completely obscures the reality. It makes it nearly impossible for an outsider like James to know what he actually owns.
It really makes you wonder about the intent. Is the complexity a bug or is it a feature?
In cases like this, complexity is often a feature. It's a strategy to discourage inquiry.
Speaking of inquiry, let's look at those trust certifications. We have one from 2018 and another from 2020. These are where Jason has to prove to the bank that he's actually the trustee, right?
Exactly. The bank needs assurance he has the legal authority to sign these loans. In them, Jason certifies he is the trustee. He has the power to sell, convey, borrow money.
And he lists the beneficiaries.
He does. He lists Jason, Candy, and James R. McClure.
So he puts it in writing to the bank? He admits James is a beneficiary.
He has to. It's a legal requirement. But do you see the disconnect? He lists James as a person with a real interest in the trust, but the rest of the file shows zero evidence that James is actually treated like a stakeholder.
It's like saying, yes, this money belongs to my brother, but I have the power to gamble with it, so I'm going to.
And if those loans go bad, the bank doesn't care that James didn't sign. They have Jason's signature, they have the certification that he can bind the trust, so James is exposed to all of the downside risk.
With zero control.
Zero. Remember, the partnership of Ronald and Jason is a closed loop. They're talking to each other, signing for each other. Ronald manages ITOW, Jason manages JCJ. They can agree to terms that benefit ITOW at the expense of JCJ, and there's no third party in the room to say stop.
James is locked out of the room where it happens.
Effectively, yes.
And it looks like this just kept going. The documents from 2017 and 2020 seem like the final blows.
The activity definitely continued. In 2017, we see transfers involving a new company, JP's Development LLC.
Another McClure venture, I'm guessing.
It fits the pattern. But then you look at the quitclaim deeds, like the one in Record 14. Jason, acting for JCJ, and OOC are just conveying their interests away. They're giving up their stake.
So let me get this straight. They take on millions in debt in 2011, they hold that risk for years, and then in some cases, they just quitclaim the interest away.
That's what it looks like. The net result is that the JCJ Trust is constantly being weighed down. It's either holding debt or it's holding a minority interest in a property that's ultimately controlled by Ronald.
So the ITOW Family Limited Partnership, Ronald's main vehicle, is the spider at the center of this web.
It really is the central hub. ITOW directs the flows. By moving assets out of the JCJ Trust or by burdening them with the debts of ITOW and OOC, they've effectively removed the liquidity and the equity from the JCJ Trust.
So James McClure is a beneficiary on paper for the ITOW Partnership, the MLR Trust, and the JCJ Irrevocable Trust. That sounds like he should be set for life.
It does.
But if ITOW is draining JCJ and MLR is controlled by Ronald,
then being a beneficiary is meaningless. That's the heart of it. You can be a beneficiary of 10 different entities, but if the managers of those entities, Ronald and Jason, conspire to move all the value out of those buckets and into their own, you own a percentage of nothing.
and their partnership was the key.
It required both of them. Ronald needed Jason's signature as trustee to use the trust assets. Jason needed Ronald's business structure to operate. They worked in tandem. And the victim of that partnership was James.
It really paints a picture of a hostile partnership. Not, hostile in a shouting match kind of way, but hostile to the interests of the silent beneficiary.
Systematic sidelining is probably the technical term, but hostile captures the reality. When you exclude a beneficiary from decisions that put their assets at risk for a decade, and you strip the value from their trust, that's a hostile act.
And James had no notice.
None that appears in these public records. No signatures on the loans, no signatures on the modifications, just Jason, certifying that he has the power to do it all himself.
It really makes you question that word, irrevocable.
It does. It forces you to look at the reality of how these legal structures actually work in practice.
Because you're told an irrevocable trust is set in stone. It's a fortress. But if the trustee can mortgage the stone, sell the quarry, and move the proceeds into his own LLC, does the word irrevocable actually mean anything at all?
That's the uncomfortable truth. A trust is only as secure as the integrity of its trustee. The paperwork can say irrevocable, but human behavior, specifically the behavior of a self-dealing trustee, can prove otherwise. If the fox is guarding the henhouse, the lock on the door really doesn't matter.
And in this case, the fox was family.
Which makes it all the more difficult to unravel.
Something to keep in mind the next time someone asks you to trust them with the keys, especially if the safe holds your future.
It's a cautionary tale about the importance of oversight, even within a family, perhaps, especially within a family.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.